Hi, this is Alonzo Bodden. I want to welcome you to episode 346 of my podcast, Who's Paying Attention? The podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. They have video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. Over 2 million people have used BetterHelp. Listeners, you get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Alonzo. That's BetterHelp.com/Alonzo. BetterHelp.com. And today we are back in studio, and I am back with a guest. This man stays busy. I've been looking at everything he's been doing. You can see him on Tacoma FD. He has his podcast, The Parents Lounge. He has a new comedy album out, and apparently he has children that he is somewhat fond of. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Kaler's here. What's up, Jamie? Just, you mention them now and then.
Every now and then, the kids, yeah. Well, my comedy, my comedy's autobiographical, so as soon as the kids came in, I really had nothing else to talk about. I was intrigued by your ad because I know listeners get 10% off, but the guests just get a good couple free sessions at BetterHelp, because I got to be honest, after the last 2 years, I think I could use a couple online sessions, man.
You have, okay, let's just jump right into it, because I listened to your album, okay?
Did you?
I did, absolutely, yes.
You actually do research?
Absolutely,
what?
Man. I had to listen to it, and I want to tell you, I think you missed on the title, okay? I think Sweet Taste of Urine. How is that not... That's a track, but how is that not an album title?
The Sweet Taste of Urine. No true words have been spoken. Yes, that was kind of a throwaway at the end. It's kind of the last track. It was just a crazy story of, I have a dog that I tried to train, for those of you out there who are dog lovers, and I don't love dogs in my bedroom.
I'm with you on that. I have a dog. I have a Great Dane. My listeners know his name's Hulk. I've had him for about a year, and you can see him all over my Instagram. But anyway,
we still have our dog. He's 18. He's a puggle. Wow. Half pug, half beagle.
Wow.
When I first met my wife in New York, I would talk to her, and she'd be like, I'm so tired all the time. I never get a good night's sleep. And then the first night I slept over her apartment, she goes to bed, and the dog's like, here we go. And the dog jumps up in the bed, and I'm like, what's happening? Because she goes, oh, well, he sleeps in the bed. And within 20 minutes, I knew why she never got a good night's sleep, because the dog would have running dreams every night, just running dreams or whatever. And I was like, well, you have the dog in your bed? She goes, I know. And I go, well, he's waking you up every 15 minutes. And also, I don't know if you know this about dogs, but they don't wear underpants. Did you know that? They don't have.
That is true.
And so when they lay down, typically, the back legs spread and the whole undercarriage just gets sealed onto your pillow. When somebody's dog is sitting on their pillow, I'm always amazed. I go, I don't even like people sitting on the corner of my bed. And so I don't like that. So I tried to train the dog to not go in the bedroom. And so I did the dog whisperer thing. And when he was in the good side of the house, I would go, hey, you're a good boy, here's a treat. And when he went to my side of the house, I would scream at him, you don't belong here, get out of this room.
And how did that work?
It worked fantastic for a while. So he would run to the other side of the house, and I'd give him treats, and I was trying to, Pavlov. I was he was the chicken, and when he raised his leg and I gave him a pellet, I was teaching him to raise his leg. And so I was trying to give him positive reinforcement and negative to dictate. And so it was going great until like 3 days later, he came into the bedroom, and I went to grab him and flip him over to show I was alpha dog, and I held him to the floor, and I was like, you don't belong in here. But right as I did, I guess I scared him too much, and his Johnson, his little junk was aimed at 45 degrees right towards my mouth, and he hit me, just peed right straight stream. Like, it was like we were at the amusement park and he was blowing up a balloon by hitting a squirt gun.
He was going to win a stuffed dog.
He was going to win a stuffed dog, and so he urinated in my mouth. And so to this day, I still have the dog, and every time I walk him in the back of his head, I know he's like, I pissed in that dude's mouth.
Yeah, we'll see who's alpha.
That's so funny that's the track. It was funny because it was such an afterthought, because it really wasn't about my kid. The whole rest of the album was about... I wrote it in quarantine. I only ran it one weekend at the La Jolla Comedy Store with notes all over the stage. Wow. And then I just tried to memorize it for 2 weeks, and then did it in front of all the parents of my kids' school.
I was going to ask you about the audience. So
They were all the parents. And it was in a recording studio here in Burbank.
Okay.
Not a comedy club because it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
It had just kind of broken and people were going out, but clubs weren't really open at full capacity. So I rented a studio that held like 40 people, put them in it, and recorded the album. And it was cathartic.
It's called Homeschooled, and it's about, that's a big part of it, homeschooling. But you have a unique background, okay? And I did not know this. You were in ROTC at Boston University.
Yep.
And you were actually an officer in the Navy.
I was a Navy lieutenant. I served 5 years after college. And then at 30, got out, 29, got out, and was like, hey, I'm going to get into acting and comedy.
So you're a Navy lieutenant.
Yeah.
1 year of homeschooling kicked your ass. Second grade math.
Destroyed me. Absolutely. I was going to re-up and just go back in so I could get away from my kids for a couple weeks. Yeah, it was... You don't have kids?
No, I don't have kids.
Yeah. Do you want?
No, I'm not going to do the old dad thing. I admire the old dad. You're in between. You're not an old dad. The old dads start in their 50s or 60s.
My daughter was born when I was 50.
All right, you're an old dad. I
appreciate you trying to help me out, but no, I'm pretty painful. Yeah. So I was never going to have kids. I just wasn't. And it was more so, it wasn't that I didn't want to have kids. I didn't want the responsibility, like the fear. I know I'm an emotional human being, and even today when something happens to my daughter, they are just extensions of your nervous system. And when they feel any pain, I'm like, I'm just a mess.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to have them. But for some reason, I got to a certain point in life where every year just went by, and I was like... I talk to people about this, and it's like you either go towards children and maybe suffer, and maybe it's richer and more familial, and there's more to it, or you kind of like, I was in my 40s, and every year it's like it went, New Year's, 4th of July, Christmas, next year. Like it just, and it was great. Now, don't get me wrong, I had a blast, but I don't know.
How long were you married before you had the kids?
Oh, within a year we had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was.
Let's get right to it.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing sexual about it. Just more like it was like an operation. Like, get in here. This is happening. My temperature's right. Yeah.
Business.
It was like I was the postman, just delivering the product. And she's like, okay. It was like an Amazon package. That's how much joy she had.
So now, especially having done the record and all, do the other parents have an expectation? Are you the funny dad? Are you like automatically they expect,
a little, yes. And it's funny too, because we did a big fundraiser just before everything went south. Or was it? It was right. Oh, it was when everything opened up. Remember when the pandemic ended and then it restarted?
Right.
It was right there. And so we did a big benefit for the school. And it was the most nervous I've been in years, because you're like, ugh. I mean, if you bomb in front of the other parents, you got to live that every day in Carline. It's like Carline sucks enough, but then you're like,
that's Jamie.
Yeah,
he thought he was funny.
That's right. And I've talked to other comics who've done that and bombed and said, maybe you shouldn't do this. But I had a great show put together. Kira Sultanovich, Laurie Kilmartin.
Oh wow.
Brian Kiley. And we all jumped on and did a show, and people were also like dying. Nobody had been out for a year.
Right. Everyone wanted to be entertained.
Everyone wanted to laugh. But the show went fantastic. So all of a sudden it was like, hey, there's the funny guy. So they want to do it again this year, and part of me was like, no, that was good. I got it. But,
now you gotta. Well, no, you've got this every year now.
So now it's a big fundraiser for
as long as your kids are.
But then they came out, and the thing was great. It was super fun, and. It's funny. From a guy who's done albums and specials, my last album, I'd run the jokes for years. And then you're finally like, I was always like, oh, it's not right. This isn't right. It's not perfect. It can be better. And then this one, I was like, something about the pandemic. I was like, fuck this. Yeah. I just was like, I didn't give a shit.
I'm doing that in a few weeks. I'm doing one at Philly and Helium in Philly.
Now, it's all probably new material you haven't run?
Yeah, it's all pandemic stuff, because it's like, I got to use it, right? When you have the pandemic stuff, we're like, okay, I got to use this because this thing is going to end, and I will have to talk about life again. So let me get all this material done. Right.
That's what happened to me. So I ran it for one weekend, And then I basically ran it like a play. My wife, when she did come to see it, I go, well, you never heard any of those jokes? She goes, oh, I heard them. She goes, I knew them all by heart. She had heard me just walking around the house. I would walk around the neighborhood because it was an hour-long set. I would run it twice a day for like 14 days, and I was still almost canceled. I had a panic attack about, like, are these funny? Or, totally winging it. And then I got up and just let it rip, and it turned out great. I liked it better than my first album, which I had, tried to polish for years.
Well, that's what musicians say, right? You have your whole life to do your first album, and then 2 years to do your second
That's
one.
right.
Or 1 year or whatever.
Sophomore slump or whatever, yeah.
So.
But it was almost like sometimes when you're too, like, I've always had this, I don't know if you're like this as a comic, but I have everything's got to be too perfect in my brain. As opposed to just letting it rip. Sometimes that's what's better in the moment and letting it free flow and kind of staying on the tracks of the joke, but also if the moment takes you on a tangent, you kind of go and come back, which I've always loved, as opposed, I wish I was a better writer, the guys who do like 45 minutes, not a changed word, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah, I'll write like that and I'll be ready like that, but I will go off on a tangent. And I think just over time, I just worry less and less. Like the last hour I did, I put it together in like 3 months. And that was just a challenge to myself because they asked me if I could do it by a certain date. And I was like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
I'm just bang the road. I'm going to come up with an hour in 3 months. Now, of course, 6 months later, it was like, oh, now it's ready to be recorded, right? But there's always that. There's, I tell everyone that no comic, very rarely does a comic walk off stage satisfied.
Never.
You're always thinking of the one you left out,
Always.
or you could have said this or changed the order of that. And I remember my brother came to Montreal, which, how's this for a segue? He came and he hung out with me 1 year. And my brother's my best critic, like, because he knows me and he knows my work and this and that. And he's like, so this is the biggest comedy festival in the world, right? And I was like, yeah, you could say that. And he said, and probably 100 of the best comics. And I was like, arguably, you could say it. He said, I've never seen people so miserable and dissatisfied. Everyone's walking around, a standing ovation and the head drop. I said, yeah, you're around comics now, and that's how we do it.
Yeah. If I could go back, if we could go back in time, I would throw it. I'm better now about throwing stuff away, but back then, because we talked about this. We haven't really spoken much, but you were the host of my Montreal New Faces
showcase. Yes, I hosted New Faces, and I've done it a few times. Mm-hmm. So whenever people say that, I take their word for it because I cannot remember everyone who I hosted for.
Well, I'm going to go back a little further to Dadlands.
Oh, yeah. Those were the days.
I moved here. I was 30 years old, and I wasn't even doing stand-up at the time. I was doing sketch comedy at Acme and trying to act, and so I started getting acting. I didn't even start like doing stand-up till like 35, like really trying to get out to get out and do it. And so at the age of 40, I was a new face. But it was like at 35, all of a sudden I was going to Dadlands and all these places, and I remember seeing you vividly because you just had such comfort up there. You would just get up. And I'm like sitting in the back, like shitting my pants, like begging. I couldn't get on forever and ever and ever. And it was you. It was like juggernauts and Vince Vaughn, and it was this crazy pre-internet scene.
Right. It was our creative time. It was Dane. That was when Dane was becoming Dane.
So this is what happens.
Dr. Ken was there, Ralphie May, me, all of us. We had a great time. Yeah,
it was pretty crazy. And I knew Jay Davis pretty well. Mm-hmm. I think I did some acting stuff that he had done. And so finally I get on. And you do a set and you walk up and you're just and the place is buzzing and I'm nervous as shit in the back. And you're just pull the stool over and you talk and you crush and the show destroys and I'm like, Jay's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to get you on, and it's crushing. And then Dane gets up and Dane does like, I'm gonna say 25, maybe 30 minutes, and he does the Bob Barker bit, blows the fucking roof off the place. I mean, people are it's a meltdown. It is crazy. And I'm standing in the back. I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. And Jay comes up. He goes, all right, you're on. You got 6 minutes. And I go, but nowadays I go, I'm not following that. Yeah. This is insanity. And so he gives me 6 minutes. they kind of introduce me as everyone's leaving to go to the bathroom or to get away from the stage or something, and I have to like go through people as they're walking past me to get up on the stage, and I ate the biggest pile of shit. I didn't really have a good act at the time. I was really starting out. I should have never been on that stage, and still to this day, one of my best friends, every time I go, like, it's been 20-something years ago, and even now he's like, hey, you remember that time at Dadlands you just fucking ate it? And so cut to a few years later, I get to New Faces, and you're the host. You're the host, and we're nervous as shit.
Right. I do know that, because I was a new face, so I know how that feels.
But you were even a new face back when they were like, we were
secret. Yeah.
They were handing out deals.
Yes.
Mine was the first year, I think, after Chicken. We were the first year after Chicken. Yeah, they stopped handing out deals. So basically, everyone had told us, they said, nothing's going to happen. But my class was Joe Coy, Natasha Leggero, Felipe Esparza, Jay Larson. It was like juggernauts. Mm-hmm. April Macy was on it. It was a really, nobody was huge then, but you were like, these people are really talented. And we're all nervous as shit. And we do the first showcase or whatever. And I get up, and you only have 7 minutes. And they go, do not run the light. And, you're trying to juggle everybody or something, and you come over, and it's kind of super loud. And you go, hey, what's your name? And I go, Jamie Kaler. And you go, got it. And you walked out, and you go, please welcome your next comic, Peter Kane. And I look out, my manager's out there. She's like, what the fuck? And she's like melting down. But you can't, I only had 7 minutes, so I could not take the first 2 minutes to go, my name's really, because they're going to think it's part of the act.
Yeah.
And so I was just Peter Kane.
Well, sorry about that. I mean, I go by what they give me. I get a list.
Oh, it had nothing to do.
No, it's because some comics I knew, because I knew the LA comics,
sure.
Like I knew Felipe and Joe, but we didn't know each other, and that happens.
Of course.
They give you the card, and you read the name, and you're like, okay, that's that. But I'll tell you, the funny thing about New Faces, when I did New Faces, and this is when it's good that you don't know anything. So I'd been doing comedy for 4 years, and I do New Faces. And first set, Dom Herrera's the host. So my first set kills, and they're all like, it would be a feeding frenzy, because this was before the internet. So very few people knew who we were.
That's right.
So when you walked off the stage, they were coming at you. Hey, I'm from NBC. I'm from here. And it's overwhelming, but it was really cool. And then the second set, I did a different set. And they were like, oh, my God, he did a different set. And in my head, I'm like, I got 14 minutes. Yeah. Like, I could do 7. Like, to them, it was earth-shaking. And I was like, if you ask me for another, I got another 7 minutes, because I didn't know to be scared, which was good. That was a good thing.
You never, ever seemed frazzled in any set I've ever seen you do.
It's very natural to me. It's very comfortable up there for me. But, I cover when I am. But,
sure.
Those were cases where I just love being, like, I love stand-up, and I love being a stand-up. So going up there, I knew I had to kill it, but I wasn't, I don't know. It's hard to say. I wasn't afraid of it, if that makes sense.
I was nervous.
Yeah, definitely I was nervous, but I wasn't afraid. And that, in retrospect, helped a lot. But
I ended up doing the Late Late Show off of it, and it actually went super great, because I talked about my Navy days. So it was basically I got to the Navy or something or other. I forget how the jokes go, and but it was so funny, because honestly, by you introducing me with the wrong name, it took me out of my head about being nervous.
See, I was there to help.
You kind of did, in a weird way. So I walk out, and I just remember laughing for like the first 10 seconds of like, okay. And all of a sudden I was like, nobody gives a shit. What do I care? And I looked at my manager. She went like this. She raised her arms. I was like, well, what are you going to do? But in the back of my head, I was like, well, you have to tell them who you are. And then I was like, no, just do your set. They obviously are going to know they're not going to lose you and go, oh my God, the Peter Kane was amazing.
Yeah.
Where did he go? We can't get a hold
Peter
of this
King.
guy.
He was good. He just dropped in, did a set, and he disappeared.
But when I got back, my manager made me a T-shirt that said, it had a name tag on it. And it said, my name's Peter Kane. And that's been my running, my fake name.
All right.
It's been my alias forever, and it's from you.
That's your hotel alias.
That's my hotel alias.
I got
Peter
you.
Kane. So it was pretty funny. Yeah, it's funny.
Well, you've done pretty well since then, right? You've done a number of TV. You've done TV regularly.
So yeah, it was funny too because I think a lot of comics too kind of used to give me grief. I remember talking to a couple guys who were like, "We don't like you," because they didn't think I was a comic. They thought I was an actor. You know, like back in the day too, a lot of actors were like, "Well, I'll just do 7 minutes of stand up and I'll get a sitcom
Absolutely.
on TV."
We couldn't stand them. We
Nope.
were like, get out the way.
And a lot of guys kind of gave me that grief. I didn't hang at the store. I was trying, I lived in Santa Monica, so I was up on stage most of the time there. And I started working, like, as soon as I did that show, I was doing Will and Grace. I was recurring on that. And then I did My Boys for 4 seasons. So while that was on, I went out in the summer for a few things. But I hadn't really paid my dues on the road, so it was hard for me to headline because I couldn't draw. Nobody knew who I was. And so I had a good act, I felt like, and it did well. But it was like, the guys who had gone out and been on the road and gone through Tucson every year had built followings, and they didn't have that following. So it was super hard for me. And I was just talking to a friend. She's doing the Irvine Improv coming up, and she's like, we spend so much time. You're only doing an hour, and you spend hours trying to promote that show to get people to come out. I mean, building the fan base is really the hardest part of the job.
Oh, yeah. You're talking to someone who's no good at it at all.
Me too. Terrible. But the people who are good at it are really good
Well,
at
you
it.
mentioned, a couple of them. Joe Coy
The master.
is unbelievable.
The master.
Fluffy. I mean, when I first saw Fluffy, when I first saw Gabe, this guy just bounces on stage. We were in East LA, like the Bicycle Club Casino, and this giant kid, that's how I described him, this giant 10-year-old bounced on stage with funny voices, and people loved him. And we did not know, underneath that, he's a marketing genius. Now he's going to do a little show at Dodger Stadium because,
So's Joe Coy. So it was funny because I had done that show at New Faces, and Joe's also like one of the nicest people.
Joe's a sweetheart.
He's
he's good people.
And he's so blindingly funny. But we left that, and I went back here and was like out auditioning and working and acting. Joe was on the road.
Mm-hmm.
That dude, I would run into him at an airport. He'd have all his merch with him. He'd put email lists together. I mean, he built that fan base with being hilariously funny, but also marketing genius.
Yeah, me and a couple of friends, we timed it perfectly. We were too young for Johnny and too old for YouTube. So we just aimed for the middle.
Same boat.
We aimed for the middle, and that's where we ended up, right here, just,
Let me ask you a question, though, because back in the day when I first moved here, the guy who was who was like, look at me, I'm the actor, I'm big, I'm famous, wasn't doing anything. It was the quiet guy sitting at the table who had all the credits, who was the cool cat. It's like back when the teams would say, my team, and nobody ripped their helmet off to get on camera. And all of a sudden, it feels like everything has rotated. And now, if you don't do that, you cannot survive.
Well, yeah, you're right. And it's the substance, right? Because I started in 93. And my heroes were, Damon Wayans and George Wallace and George Lopez, Dom Herrera. These were the guys who I'd see every week, every night, at the Laugh Factory, Improv, or whatever. And all of them were comics, and they were like, write, keep writing, keep working. It was all about the craft. It was all about the art of comedy. And I thought, so you just get really good and the other stuff happens. Well, that's the way it was for them because, George Wallace always reminds me that I missed the 80s. He's like, you made a lot of money. I did.
Yeah.
I did. You didn't make any. I did.
Yeah.
But that's how it worked for them. And then it switched into 2000. And, Dane was a big part of it, right? Dane was the first social media superstar. And I knew him when that was happening. It was like, you could have mentioned it, but I tell everyone, listen, when we thought the internet was just to find porn, Dane was accumulating 1 million followers on MySpace.
Yep.
Like nobody knew what that was or how to use it. So I give credit where credit's due. But you're right. The problem is now, and it's in everything, you can make a lot of noise and people are looking at you even when there's no substance behind it.
No, you see a lot of stuff and there's no originality. It's so derivative. You can see where somebody has done a video that kind of went viral, and then there's just everyone else is doing the same video.
Yeah.
You're like, there's no authenticity where anybody's concerned, and no attention span either.
None.
Like if you don't, everyone's like, if you don't catch them in the first 3 seconds, I don't want to live like that.
Yeah.
And to Dane's credit, it was a business to him.
Yeah.
It was never a business to me. I love the art and the craft of it, but after the show, I wanted to hang.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a drink and I wanted to sit down with my friends. I didn't want to go back to the hotel, go online, and respond to every message. And
I didn't do that. I wanted to get up somewhere else.
Yes, I
That
did
was
too.
my thing.
I would go as far as I could.
I want to get up on, like, okay, that set's done. I
Yeah.
want to do another set somewhere else,
Yep.
But the other thing, and this still happens, and I know because I was quite often this guy, when the club books the famous one, whether it be online or TV or whatever, then they got to book a couple of real comics to make sure the show is funny.
No truer words have been spoken. I mean, you see these. Well, I have friends that they're going out, they're YouTube stars and stuff, and they don't have an act.
Right.
But a lot of people don't care. They just want to be. It's so crazy. There's this thing with fame where they want to be in the same room with them and buy their sweatshirt, and they just want to hang with them, and that's what it is.
Let me ask you about that, because you have done, well, like you said, you did My Boys for 4 years and Tacoma FD. That kind of, would ensemble shows be accurate, like versus
Always my favorite.
versus there being one superstar, like
Sure.
So do people react to you with that celebrity reaction, like, oh, this is the dude from
I'm
this is the
that guy
dude
from that thing.
And do you get that?
Yeah, I mean, when My Boys was running, it was more prevalent. Now I'll get. It's funny. They'll go, I know you from some. They just don't know where. And then you'll list it. Like, I don't want to play the game of listing credits or whatever. It's just a weird thing.
Yeah, I remember.
But it's you age out of it, and all of a sudden, My Boys was a few years ago. So people are like, I think I remember that show.
Oh, you kidding me? Now you know what I get now from comics? Man, I remember watching you when I was a kid. And I'm okay with that. Like, yeah, and I'm still in the game, kid.
Sure.
So show a little respect.
Well, it's your craft. It's what you do.
Right.
For me, it was you can see the craftsmen, you see the joke writers, you see the storytellers, and then you see the juggernauts who can also. I mean, like Joe Coy has it all. Fantastic comic, fantastic publicity guy.
Yeah.
There's only a handful of those.
Right.
There's a lot of guys who are great at publicity, but can they carry the stage?
The joke we used to say was, oh, yeah, he'll work everywhere once.
That's, yeah. And I think that's happening to a lot of YouTube people now where they get through. But, the clubs just want to sell seats. And so, when that all started to change, it was like, yeah, I can't blame them. They're trying to fill seats, and it is a business at the end of the day. But it is funny because you see, like, there's a whole slew of people where you're like, that dude's the funniest guy in the room, can't sell a ticket.
Right. Yeah. And it's always been that way. Yeah. Like I've talked to the old veterans, the old masters, Dom Herrera, Rich Scheidner, who does great stuff on the history of comedy.
And plus a huge writer. He's written for so many other comics.
And they're like, yeah, the biggest guy was never the funniest.
Never.
Sometimes they'd be funny,
yeah,
but it was never the funniest.
There's a handful of guys who have been able to put it, or somebody like Chappelle, who was just such a being where he had to be catapulted up.
Yeah, it's a different. He operates on a different level. I tell people that, like, people who aren't comics don't understand the reverence comics have for Dave.
Yeah,
because we know what he does, so we're like, yeah, it's like in music. I work a lot with jazz people and stuff, and I always say there was one time I was talking to Herbie Hancock, and it was like he was speaking in a different language. And a friend of mine said, yeah, Herbie's a musical genius nerd, and if you're not, he can't communicate with you. He can't break it down simple enough for you. I was like, I understand.
He's like one of those guys on 60 Minutes who can't tell you the cost of a washing machine.
Right.
But he breaks down. It's like, that's good, yeah.
So speaking of fans, so I, like I said, I listened to Homeschooled, and this is what I walked away saying. Okay, the dads would vote you Father of the Year? Mom and the kids? Maybe not.
Yeah, it's funny too because I have a friend who has really young kids, and he was like, "You're kind of, acerbic a little bit and a little negative." And I go, "Give it time." And he has recently reached out to me and goes, "Yeah, my kids hit that age," and I go, "Yeah, it's painful."
It kicked in. And
listen, I'm a big softie and I love my kids and stuff, but I'm pretty honest in my assessment of parenthood, and it's the hardest thing anyone's ever going to go through. And to have my kid, I actually talk to my kids like they're full-grown adults. I go, cut it with the bullshit. I know what you're doing. Stop it. And she's like 5 years old. So it is. It's kind of a weird thing to it. But yeah, that's funny. And my wife doesn't even I don't know if she even listens to my material. She doesn't. She doesn't.
I heard some of it, and the fact that she's still married to you tells me, no, she's not listening.
You know what's funny? She was sitting on the stage while I did it in the recording hall because we had a couple chairs, and she sat up there, and she was actually scrolling her phone while I did my set. And so there's one, I don't even know if it made the album, but I have a video of it where I'm like, and I was talking about how my wife scrolls her phone. I looked over and she's like scrolling her phone. And I go, are you on your phone? You're 6 feet away. Everyone can see you. I'm doing a show. What the? Yeah, and so it was like that. So there is this crazy addiction with people nowadays. I don't know. I'm kind of, it's funny too. We talk about social media and stuff, and I do it somewhat because it's our business, but I don't love it. It doesn't make me happy.
Yeah, I don't know if it makes anyone happy. This guy told me a term I hadn't heard, but I liked it a lot. He said, "Yeah, just post and ghost." He said, "Never go back, never look at the comments. You don't want to hear what they had to say. Just put yours out there and disappear." But a long time ago, someone told me that. They said, "Never read the comments. Just don't." Because you have to give the same credit to the good ones that you do to the bad ones. Which, as a comic, it's like, no. You have to try to care about the good ones because you only see the bad ones,
Yeah.
So.
I don't. Yeah, I think you also get to an age where you just don't give a shit. And I also don't respond. I listened to your podcast with John Henson or something, and you were like, dude, like I'll read stuff, but I'm not going to give them any credence. Like I won't respond to go, hey, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I won't do that. I'll ghost them or I'll delete it. I'll just delete the comment.
Oh, John will.
I know he will.
John
did my podcast too. I know John well.
John will be in touch.
John will. And you're right. You're like, dude, don't give. That's what they want. A lot of them are doing it specifically to get a rise out of you. And if you do, they win. You can't.
Well, absolutely. I mean, because that's the whole thing. You attack someone with a ton of followers in the hope that you get on their feed.
That's it.
Right? That's,
Yeah.
I mean, this whole Joe Rogan thing, which I just figure anything wrong in society, I'm just hanging it on Joe Rogan.
I listen to you. I listen to the podcast.
Whatever it is,
I'm in the same boat.
Joe did it.
Last time I checked, it doesn't say the Joe Rogan News podcast.
Right. Forget news.
He's a host of Fear Factor.
Yeah.
He's a comic. What are you doing? If that's where you're getting your news, that's your problem.
Right. He had people eating worms. Yeah. So considering that, horse tranquilizer really ain't that bad. When you look at some of the things he fed them on Fear Factor.
It was pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, too, because, I watch all the news sources, and I watch CNN get on and just talk crappy about Fox. And then their stuff's pretty effed up. And then you watch Fox, and they talk shitty about CNN. And those guys both have the word news in their channel. Right. So maybe they should be held to a higher standard. I don't know.
You would think. Okay. This podcast sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Listen, they can help you with all kind of things. You're having problems with relationships. Well, actually, we've got the relationship expert right here. Jamie will take care of any relationship problems you have, and he'll fix your kids. And then you will definitely need BetterHelp. All right, I'll stop joking now. But BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you got to take care of your most important relationship, and that is with yourself, okay? What is in your way of having a better life? Is it grief? Is it depression? Whatever it might be, BetterHelp has people who can help you. And this is online therapy. This isn't some kind of self-help thing. This is online therapy, video, phone, and live chat sessions with your therapist. Okay, you don't have to see him on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in person, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. So give it a try. Listen, mental health is a big issue right now. We see it in the news all the time. You are not the only one. Mental health is a real thing. Work on it. Give it a try. See why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy. This podcast, sponsored by BetterHelp. Show listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/code. I keep doing that. I'm sorry. betterhelp.com/Alonzo. That's BetterHelp.com/Alonzo. Mental health is a real issue. betterhelp.com can help you.
And if you have trouble spelling BetterHelp, I have a website called betterspelling.com that if you come to, I can teach you how to spell BetterHelp. It's funny you talk about that because it's a big thing now, and I'm all for it. And so I host a podcast called The Parents Lounge.
Right.
And it's all parents. And
I wanted to talk to you about that. I had a meltdown during the last 2 years. I don't know how you took it, being no children. For me, it was quiet. It was the first time in my career things got quiet because, like you said, as a comic, you're always traveling, on the road. You're going, you're doing this, that. Suddenly, it's like, no, sit down and be at home. So that was my issues, but it turned out to be a good thing.
I was up every day. I had the kids like all day, every day, and we were having meltdowns. So I host another thing called the Dadlands, and it was all just dad stuff. And so we had these Thursday mental health nights, we called them. And it was just hangs, and like 30, 40 guys would come in on one Zoom, and I would Phil Donahue it and just go around the Zoom and talk to guys. And by talking to all these other dads, it made me feel so much better because, it's like everything else, whether it's kids or anything, we're all going through the same troubles. Everybody is.
Right. I think that's the powerful thing because I've been in recovery and been sober a long time, and I tell people there's a lot of power in finding out you're not the only one. Right? Because we're always in our own head and we think nobody else knows. And like you said, now you got 30 dads and you guys are like, oh, yes. Okay, so I'm not the only one who thinks that way or has done that or whatever, right? I mean, is that your experience?
Very much so. And I think it's the same with comedy because, you'll tell some insane story, everybody laughs. You know why they laughed? They had the exact same thing happen to them. That's why. It's sometimes like I'll tell a joke or something and nobody laughs and I go, I guess that really did just happen to me. Which is so rare. But with kids, parents, and it's funny too because, I had a meltdown and it wasn't going great for me and I was probably one of the better off ones. We weren't financially strapped.
Right.
I was lucky that I could stay home with the kids and we were okay. There were people in the country who were like, couldn't have childcare and do a job. I mean, it was nuts, and people were losing their minds. So all of a sudden, all these other parents started to come in and tell their insane stories, and it was BetterHelp for everybody else in a way because you're absolutely right. As soon as you hear like some of the other stories, I was like, oh shit, man, that dude's got it way worse than I do. Holy shit, I thought I was having a bad day. Wow, that is a bad day. So, any parents out there, definitely come over because we did one last week and we just posted the link and let anybody come in because we do it live on StreamYard, so it goes out on Facebook and YouTube and Twitch. And we normally have guests, parenting. Joe Coy's been on, and we've had a bunch of comics who are parents, Josh Wolf. But last week we just opened it up and we said, I want to talk to normal people. And so normal people came in. And yes, granted, some of them weren't the best storytellers, but we kind of fixed their story for them. And it was super funny to have people come in, from the middle of the country who were like, dude, you have no idea. I'm hanging on by a thread. And you're right. People have, in the last 2 years, the depression level, the kids today, it's just a bad time. So,
well, it's an unknown time.
Yeah.
Right? And it's unknown. Like I was listening to the radio earlier today, and they were talking about the early pandemic. Like how we forgot what it was like in April, in March, April 2020, when we didn't know how long it was going to be. And,
supposed to be 2 weeks.
And I was like, because when they said lockdown in April, we were like, we'll be out in May.
Yeah.
And then in May, it was like 4th of July. I don't think it was until after 4th of July, some people were like, hey, this is real. And then some people were like, hey, this is really fake. Like they
We weren't a divided country for those first couple of weeks. We were like, hey, do you need anything? I'm going to the store. Can I get you something? Do you need help? And then now we're at like, fuck here's what's happened. Now there's a guy in my neighborhood who is something about the leaf blowers, gas-powered leaf blowers is pissing him off. So his response is he's letting his dog crap on everyone's yard and then putting a little note in it. And the note says, I hate leaf blowers.
Leaf blower, right.
And this is my response to you. And you're like, wow, this is where we've come to as a society. People are using dog shit as a weapon.
Well, see, but that's in Studio City.
I guess.
Because in parts of the country, they just shoot him. Right?
He may get shot. People in the city, trust me. You know what's funny? L.A. is not as...
Oh, L.A. isn't as blue as people think.
It's not as blue as you think, especially when you are at a school and you meet all the other parents and you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, when people go into the booth and pull the lever, that's when they're telling you who they really
That's
are.
so true.
Not what they're saying. They go in the booth and they pull that lever. It's like,
I think last election's polls taught us a little something about that. About like, I'm going to pull this lever. All right, are you?
Yeah,
is that the one?
Yeah.
I promise I'm pulling that one. And then the Joker gets in and just pure chaos.
Right.
I want to see the world burn.
So I want to ask you about two things. Two things this past week.
Okay.
As a family man, as a dad, as a husband. The Super Bowl Valentine's Day combination was kind of unique this year in back-to-back. And you talk about TV and how you get to watch TV. So I'm just going to ask you now, have you seen the entire Super Bowl yet, or did you just record it and you're right now in the third quarter? Should I not ruin it for you?
No, I am a big fan of the Super Bowl, the halftime show, and the commercials. We were at a party. Here's what happens. As soon as you have children, your friends are then dictated by your children's friends. Mm-hmm. So you don't pick, the same way you didn't pick your friends in high school was who you sat next to. Now, later in life, when you have kids, your friends are theirs. Luckily, they're all great people. We had a super fun time. But they had our kids over, so the kids were all in the backyard. And then I wanted to watch the game. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of annoyed because some people were chatty, and I couldn't really hear the halftime show as well as I wanted to.
That's why I don't go to Super Bowl parties.
I know. If it was my team, I would not have gone. I would have stayed home. But
what'd you think of it all?
I liked it. I loved the game. I mean, it was great. And I felt bad for Burrows or whatever. And there was a couple bad calls. But it was, I thought overall this has been the best football playoffs of all time.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah, this season was.
I still wonder. I mean, Eminem is a middle-aged billionaire white guy. Why is he so angry? Can he put a smile on his face at least once somewhere along the line, or is that just his brand?
My favorite is when Ice Cube sneers, and it's like, Cube, you won.
Yeah,
Cube, you won.
Game's over, brother. You won it. He's like, you're not the same kid on the bus.
Remember that Daddy movie you did for Disney? Yeah, that was, no, we all respect to Compton, all respect to Ice Cube and everything else, but when you did the Dad movie for Disney, that's when you kick back and say, okay, I'm on the other side. Like, I think Dr. Dre has accepted, I'm a billionaire now. Like, I'm in.
He had a smile on his face?
Yeah, he's like, I won. This is my show. And
Snoop's always had a smile on his face.
Snoop. They actually put in the news that Snoop smoked weed before the show. Like, really? That's news.
Snoop is so loved that he even produced porn for a while, and everyone's like, nah, it's Snoop. What are you going to do?
Right.
It's Snoop porn.
Snoop and Shaq.
The best.
Have they said no to any commercial for any product ever?
Well, I say that about The Rock. I mean, if you said, God. Hey, can you come just perform at my kid's school? Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
What do you need me?
Yeah.
The bus will be there at 4 a.m. because I got to work out before the show. That dude, I mean, did you see the size of his arm?
Yeah.
And his waist is like a 24. He's not even human anymore.
He's everywhere on everything. And
Shaq, when Shaq does a commercial, he takes part of the company. Do you know the whole?
Right, yeah.
He
gets stock.
He's one of the most genius guys of all time because he goes, hey, I like Ring Camera. I'll take half the company and I'll blow you up. And they go, yeah, you're in. And Gold Bond and the General.
Yeah. Well, he learned that. He learned that. The money's in the back end, right? And if your name can sell, then you get a piece of it. And
I was flipping around and Blue Chips was on the other day. You remember Blue Chips? Because Shaq's the kid in it. You're like, it's Shaq. Holy cow, Shaq.
Oh, man. They were doing a thing of Shaq's movies and stuff. What was the one where he was the genie?
Shazam.
Yeah.
Kazam. Because Shazam, they couldn't get the rights to Shazam.
Right, Kazam, yeah. Yeah, Shaq's had it, but guys like that had an interesting life. I say right now in my world, JB Smoove is living the greatest life. There's nothing bad. There's not one bad day of being JB Smoove.
No. No. Was he always really good friends with Larry David?
No, they met through the show, but they are.
He cast him as the guy, and then he was a friend?
Yeah, but they hit it off. Speaking of Montreal, JB was in Montreal, and he was doing this show called The Late Night Hot Tub. And it was at this theater, and other comics, you'd go to his hot tub after your set, right, and just sit there and talk. And he would call Larry from Montreal, just like in real life. Larry, you got to see these bitches in Montreal, Larry. Oh. French bitches all over Montreal. And it's like, he's really talking to Larry right now.
You got to get up in that ass. You got to get up in that ass, Larry.
Now he's Caesar.
Blows my mind. Blows my mind. I'm like, that's JB Smoove. Yeah, and Patton is some just town goer.
Right, yeah.
They don't even take their names anymore. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's
what, somebody was telling me recently that we haven't evolved to be happy yet, which I kind of agree with, because I'm actually, as a comic, I play the smart ass and I take the opposing view, but pretty happy guy.
I think we know too much.
Couldn't agree more.
We know too much.
Absolutely.
I always said that I wish I still had my sense of wonder, because I see through it now. And
You know what brings that back? You know what brings back that sense of wonder?
What?
Children.
Yeah, I could see that.
All of a sudden, Christmas, everything changes. And yeah, it's a lot more work, but all of a sudden you start to see the wonder again a little bit, and it kind of rejuvenates you to a degree. It also super painful. But you see it through your children's eyes, and it's so true. And it kind of reminds you what we have lost. And you're right, because it's like when I go to a restaurant, I want them to go, here's 5 choices, pick one. I don't want to go to I like the Cheesecake Factory, but there's you guys are making lo mein and pancakes, and it's too much. Just pick a handful and I think it's the same with TV now. There's a billion shows. It's just white
and
noise.
We have all the information. Now so now I got my tablet in front of me. Oh, let me go on to IMDb and find out everything about this actor or this actor. Oh, wait a minute. They liked this? I didn't like that, so now I can't like them. And, we have all of that. Like athletes, right? We didn't have 24/7 coverage of athletes. I grew up, I probably became knowledgeable about sports in the 70s, definitely through the 80s. We didn't know what they were doing, and I don't care. I don't want to know. I would probably still like Kanye if there was no social media.
Absolutely, because you'd like him off his work.
You'd hear the music, and you'd be
work.
like, this guy. But now it's like, I don't know. Although I will give him, if your ex is hooking up with Pete Davidson, I could see where that would be a problem.
Yeah, we got some problems.
Yeah,
There's a problem there.
You can. So I'm going to give him a pass on that one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff, but on the Pete Davidson thing, I'm like, you got to watch that every day. I can see where.
Yeah. Well, I always thought about that when you see, you see the magazine cover of, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and you're like, oh, man, poor his ex-wife, Jennifer Aniston, shops. And she's like, oh, great. I got to see this for the rest of my life. It's got to suck.
I just think at some point Brad was like, enough. Every time you come home, there's a new kid. Right? There's a new kid from another country you've never heard of.
It's an alien? What country is this the kid from? And at the end of the day, he's like, oh, that's right. I'm Brad Pitt. I was in a room next to him, close to him, close enough to go, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He's really you're like, God damn, that guy's good looking, man.
Yeah.
And he's
can imagine.
Yeah, he's pretty great. So it's kind of funny.
I could imagine.
I never wanted that kind of fame, and I think that's all I ever wanted. When I moved to Hollywood, I wanted to be Ted Danson. You know what I love? I love sitcoms where you show up on Monday, you do the table read, you work it out, you craft all the jokes, you shoot it on Friday, you go have a couple drinks, and you say, that was it. Fantastic. It's a body of work. And I kind of did that with the last album, and it was so fulfilling that I'm going to try to do that with the next one of put it up, work it out, not take it on the road, 7 nights at the Chuckle Hut. It's not my jam.
If you find what you love in this business and you get to do it, then that's a dream. Then you've won, right?
But you have to have some notoriety now, or you're not it hurts your career. You have
Right.
to have, they definitely, when they're sitting there casting and there's down to a few people, they go, well, let's check who's got the biggest Instagram account, because they know that there's so many shows on TV, on Apple Plus or Hulu or Crackle or wherever, that they need that person to blast it out to their millions of subscribers to get any kind of fan base to come in and watch the thing. And so it's like it's a three-headed monster that's getting fed by the social media.
I've been trying to get canceled. That's my thing. And they told me you're not really a big enough name to cancel. So even though you're wrong, we don't care. I've been trying. I don't know.
It would help your numbers.
It would absolutely.
In half the country.
It's one of the biggest jokes, this thing of being canceled. Nobody who's been canceled has gone away. It's just like another publicity thing. So every now and I tell my crowds how much I hate them individually and collectively and whatever ethnic group, religion.
Drop
they
some
might
race bombs.
fall. Oh,
and
absolutely.
Some misogynistic bombs.
Just tell me what you are. Just tell me what you are, and I try. And
What's funny now? We had a guest on our show lately, and then we told her it was live. It goes out live. So Dave Keckner came on, and even I was like, holy shit.
Super talent,
super funny, but said crazy things. Where I was like, but he's Keckner, so it's just funny.
Right.
He can get away with it. Where I was like, well, man, if I said that, I'm fucked. But we had this woman on, and she goes, live? I can't do live. What if I might get canceled? I go, first of all, you're a 40-year-old woman. You're not going to get canceled. And then, so we pre-recorded it, and she wouldn't answer any questions. She wouldn't talk. Mm-hmm. And she was so gun-shy that we scrapped the whole thing and never aired it, because it was terrible, because people are on guard about what they can and can't say so badly that it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Well, we got to wrap up in a minute, but I will say this, and this is the beauty of, like, you say you love doing sitcoms, you've done the album, but you're a comic. And the thing about comics is they can't stop us from telling the truth. And it's something in you, like your mind is saying, don't say this, I got to say it. It's right there, right? I mean, comics do that.
I've said terrible things.
And then, you were talking about Dadlands. I was talking with somebody about this. If they had recorded those sets, we're done. We're done.
There's
with
jokes
the things
I
we
did then
said
I couldn't do now.
That were just, but everybody, everybody's laughing because people had the sense of humor. And I argue that they still do if it's funny. The crowd can always tell if it's funny or if you meant it. They're like dogs. They can sense what's behind it.
Yeah.
Dogs can
Burr's
sense
the king of that.
Yeah.
Burr says things. And you're like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, can he say that? And then you're like, that's actually really funny. And such a great turn on it that he's looking at it from 180 degrees where you're like, that's absolutely true. He's so right. But, he's at a level where he kind of just doesn't care. He's kind of Teflon about the whole thing.
Well, I don't think he's Teflon, though, because it is funny.
Super funny.
And that's the thing about it. So even if you try to hold him to it, it's like, yeah, but this is funny. So if you're denying it, if you're trying to deny it's funny and make it read, there's nothing worse than somebody, and I get this. I've had this happen online where people try to break down a joke with truth, and you're like, okay, well, if you want to examine it through that, then it's not going to be funny. I did this whole thing about buying a gun, and when you fill out the form, some of the questions, is there a restraining order against you? Like, who's checking yes on that box, right? Just things like that. And this guy was like, well, the reason you have this, and I'm like, would you shut up? You shouldn't have a gun because you have no sense of humor. But if you check on the is there a restraining order against you box, then they're like, it's not the restraining order. It's that you're so stupid, we just can't trust you. You put yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. It's all for the proceedings in court. It's so funny because on the turn of that, what makes me so angry is when somebody just says something stupid or mean and then goes, "It's just a joke," and you're like, "That's not a joke."
That would be every politician.
Every politician, where it was like, "I was joking." No, you weren't. Or even like just people on Twitter or something. They'll say something mean when they get called out. They go, "It's a joke." No, a joke has a setup and a punchline that people laugh. No one's laughing at this. It's not funny whatsoever. You're just kind of a dick.
It's one of my favorite moments when people say, "You know what's funny?" Yeah, actually I do.
Yeah.
There's not a lot I know, but yeah, I do know what's funny. That is something I know.
That's like when the comics, they go, trust me, you'll get this on the way home. No, nobody's getting it on the way home. Later tonight, you'll think about how funny this is. It's not that funny.
Jamie, tell everyone where to find you, where to follow everything, the podcast, where to buy the
definitely
album.
come find me, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Jamie Kaler. But if you are a parent or you know a parent who needs some mental health after you do your BetterHelp session, come watch. We do a live show 7 p.m. every Tuesday night. Just Google The Parents Lounge. It's on YouTube, Facebook. Goes up live, and then we have all kinds of parenting content. But it really is kind of a cathartic. It takes a village to remind parents that, you know, you're not going through anything anyone else hasn't gone through. And so to hear it from other people, like you said before, is really what can make people kind of go, all right, man, what am I worried about? You know, people make it harder than it needs to be, I think.
I want to thank you. And I also want to tell you that one of the things I do on the podcast with guests, I always ask them to give us some good news. And I didn't have to ask you. You did it. The thing about being happy and the wonder of having kids. I appreciate that because in this time, I love doing topical stuff. Once you start talking about the news, you go down the rabbit hole, this and that. But what you just said about being happy and the wonder of kids, man, that's a beautiful thing. I thank you for bringing that to the podcast.
I love it. My daughter's, I'll just tell you this really quick. The other night, we were on Palm Springs on vacation, and it's just the little things they do. We were all sleeping in the same room because we're vacationing and parents, and there's no vacation for parents or whatever. And all of a sudden, I hear my daughter at like 4 a.m, kind of rustling in bed, and she talks in her sleep, which I didn't know until we were all in the same room. And all I hear is she goes, "Quick, destroy." That's it. No other words are said. And so for the rest of the night, I'm like, what is she destroying? And I talked to her the next day, and she was like, I don't know. I think it was a video game or something. But it's these little things that make you laugh so hard and make you happy in life. So I think I think what you're doing is great.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Jamie. Thanks for coming on, everyone. This is Who's Paying Attention, episode 346. This weekend, I will be in Winchester, California, which is right outside of Temecula. And next weekend, I'm headed back to Denver to Comedy Works South. So come see me live. Thanks again, Jamie.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Super fun.
We did.